right.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Hardened Stockholm. Today we are kicking it off. Gonna go with my co-caster Konrad here. We are quickly going to jump into our first game, where the players are already setting up. And for this first game in the groups, we have Emilia Mattsson playing Prism against Henrik Dahlstrom playing Chain, and they are just about rolling for first. So Konrad, what do you think about this matchup specifically? We know in CC, Runeblade typically kind of strong against illusionists with a lot of the one pings, but this is the old Prism that makes a lot of shields.
Mm.
What do you think is going to happen here?
I'm really intrigued about what weapons they will be using. You see, instantly there's from Prism. There's the OG Luminaris,
Mm-hmm.
um, and from
It looks like we are seeing the old Luminaris indeed.
Luminaris and Rosetta Thorn from Shane. So in general, Shane's insane hero power is that he is allowed to create a soul shackle to give his next action go again. And what the soul shackle does is he's allowed to, at the beginning of his turn, he banishes the top card of his library. And while that can be seen like a drawback, it's actually in many ways means that he's allowed to draw extra cards each turn. So as the game progresses, we'll probably see him banish more and more card from the top of his library. And while that seems like he will be close to fatiguing himself, he's also giving himself a bigger hand each turn. And if Henrik is well versed and lucky enough, he can set up a powerful pitch stack so that he will know what he will banish from top and be able to play from his banish zone.
And so he's trying to accumulate value over time. And it's already that we're seeing the differences between Living Legend and Classic Constructed come in as Emilia swings in with a Herald and Henrik immediately throws down the 3 block. And just says like, here you go, there's most of my cards for your one attack. This is not a move you would very typically see I mean, you see people blocking out, but not on what I believe is a 7th attack.
Might have been, or is it I think it's a 6 because it's the yellow one.
Yes.
So yellow herald.
Then definitely giving three block cards.
I would imagine there are very few poppers in the Shane deck because Shane is pretty low key in the sense that he likes to go wide with plentiful attacks, but not necessarily the biggest of attacks. And it's an unfortunate glare, but I think that's just a simple rune chant on the side of Henrik.
Yes, I think that was him activating the grasp.
Yep. And overpitching some. Might be so that he doesn't like his hand very much and he tries to get rid of stuff from it.
Yeah, I think there is a belittle in there.
Yep.
And
probably and Mordred Tide. Not at Mordred Tide, it's what's the other one? The one that makes your next attack, gives your next attack a go again and some kind of buff so that if it hits you get X rune chance, where X is 3, 2 or 1 depending on the color of the card.
So we're just seeing him swinging with that Rosetta Thorn, not doing anything too fancy, anything spectacular just yet. And we are seeing Emilia carefully thinking about how to block that out. And instead pitching, most likely going to be seeing some of those shields being created to absorb this instead. Very Enigma style. Or Soul Shield.
That's a big Soul Shield, block 6 to the 2 damage of the Rosetta Thorn.
Definitely does not want that to connect, or really is probably just forced to do this to get their cards into the soul.
Yeah, exactly. She wants her soul, and she also wants to make use of her cards because she understands that I probably won't be able to find anything bigger with this, and Soul Shield at this point might just be a yellow pitch, so I might as well use it to make give me something in my soul to use. So it makes sense, and I think this matchup can be deceptively slow in the sense that Emilia as Prism wants to set up and build up some kind of board to attack with a lot of spectral shields, while Henrik probably will snowball in the sense that the more soul shackle he has, the more cards he will banish from his top of the library, and the bigger hands he will be able to get because many of his cards is possible to play from his banished zone. So as long as he has ways to gain action points or give go again, he can go incredibly wide with a good mix of both physical and arcane damage.
That makes sense. Both players are trying to sort of roll themselves into an advantage, and because of that, we're probably not going to see anything too crazy here for the start of the game, and really just both players kind of taking it easy and starting to set up for that late game. So as you say, with Chain making those the soul shackles, and Prism trying to set up, we're very slowly going to see a train that's going to like start steaming up, and probably in the late game we're going to get some insane plays where Chain is playing with an 8-card hand and Amelia might have 10 different shields on the board. So it's interesting to see what will happen.
Yeah, and it seems like Henrik has created his first soul shackle to give something go again. Let's see what he decides to.
So he was able to hold on to a big card because he wasn't pressured that hard, opting to just take the 1 damage from the shield.
And that is a very, very unfortunate glare, because I can't make it up what card it is.
Yes, we'll make sure to get that fixed as soon as we can, but right now I think we will just have to bear with it.
Mm-hmm.
So we see a double pitch happening. And an attack coming in for 7 damage. Thankfully
It is a big one.
Die is not affected by the glare at all. So 1 spectral shield disappearing.
Yeah. And Amelia. Ah, exactly. She took the spectral shield, ate up the rune chant, and she decides to block cleanly for 7.
Yes.
Taking no damage.
Yeah, I was wondering. I thought the players were ordering things a little bit strangely.
Yeah.
But it's the rune chant that was coming.
Yeah. It's hidden in the glare for us. So here comes the Rosetta Thorn, which I would say one of my least favorite weapons, in the sense that it's just busted, I guess is the best word for it. It's so simple to activate and it gives with a very simple condition for a Rune Blade. If you've played an attack and a non-attack action this turn, it's 1 resource for 2 physical, 2 arcane damage, and it's very, very hard to defend against.
Yes, I guess the idea when this weapon was being designed was probably that it would be very hard to activate, but then when you have entire decks based around playing a non-attack and an action...
It doesn't seem so hard, does it?
Exactly.
So here comes another Herald. I think it's Herald of Triumph, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you are right as well. So we are seeing the Herald swing in for 5, and we see Henrik carefully deliberating what to do. Even though these are not exactly the power turns, because as we were talking about, we're probably going to see this game pick up steam later on. Players are still carefully deciding how to position themselves best to move into that end game where they are going to look to close out the game and actually kill their opponent. In this case, we see Henrik giving up some armor, actually blocking with the gloves relatively early in order to make that what seems to be a clean block. And we see Amelia now with a sink below in hand and several more yellows. Right. So I believe this Prism deck is playing most of those heralds that on hit go into the soul. The aim being to just launch some sort of hit that is annoying to block or hard to block, or that your opponent doesn't want to block. And when even just a single point of damage gets through, you fill up that soul and then you can spiral from there.
Yeah, and the rate is so good on all the heralds, in the sense that if you pop it with which means blocking with a 6 or more power attack, the attack just dissolves and nothing happens because of the phantasm keyword. But if you don't pop it, it's like a 2 resource for a big attack with usually some kind of on hit. Not only it goes into soul, but it's also does something else. And For example, Herald Triumphs makes it so that it's hard to pop because defending cards get -1. But there is also other powerful on it's like draw 2 cards or deal damage. So it's a very these are powerful cards, and they can be annoying to deal with, especially with decks with fewer or no 6+ power attacks.
Yes, exactly. And I've always, because I have played against the newer Prism quite a bit, but since I usually play Rhinar as a brute, or even Guardian, or even Riptide has some poppers, I've always wondered how you kind of deal with stuff like Heralds if you're playing a Ninja. I guess you kind of just gotta raise, because like blocking it out is going to be very inefficient for you.
Yeah, you probably have to raise. But it's interesting if we talked about it, we just said that Emilia's weapon of choice is the OG Luminaris. But what Luminaris does is that during your action phase, all your illusionist auras are actually 1 power weapons, which they are free to attack, and if you have pitched yellow card, all your illusionist attacks have go again. And this means like all your heralds and all your auras has go again. So every spectre shield Emilia gets to keep, she can attack with for free on her turn. So Hendrik has to keep them to as low as possible, because if he doesn't, he will be run over both by damage and by the prevention. But it seems like Hendrik hasn't been that aggressive with his soul shackles. At this point, he only has 2 soul shackles in play, meaning that at the beginning of his turn, he banishes 2 cards from top. Let's see what he finds. There's a Seeds of Agony and a Runic Swarming.
What also sort of makes sense, I guess, is a little bit of the flavor that comes in there with Luminaris being a light card and synergizing with all of those light cards. That's also why you see your Prism player playing so many yellows. Yellow's usually a little bit in a weird spot. If you want to be aggressive, you want to be playing the reds. If you want resources, you want to be pitching the blues because they give more resources. But light heroes obviously often build around that theme of, well, light and yellow cards and
Yep.
holy and goodness and all that good stuff.
The yellow as we like it.
Exactly.
And this is just a quick pointer. This is the card we saw before. Runic Reclamation is the one, and this seems to be like a very good sideboard card against Prism specifically, because you can destroy auras of the opponent if the attack hits, and if you do, you get the rune chant. So it seems to me like Hendrik probably sideboarded this against Prism specifically.
And it is a popper as well,
Yep.
even a 7, so it is immune to the -1 damage negation. We see it being used offensively here for its aura destroy effect, and we see Emilia immediately putting down some cards. It looks like Emilia does not have any auras right now, at least, so even if it were to hit, there's nothing that can be destroyed, but it looks like they're simply trying to preserve their life total in this situation.
Yeah, she's playing defensively. I can see why, because at this point it is up to Hendrik to present enough damage to present lethal before he will fatigue. Because at the start of every turn, the top 3 cards from his library are banished, and they won't get back to his library. Even though he can play them, there are cards with blood depth, which will damage him, and he will have no more cards to... Basically, the only card he will get to keep is his pitch at the end of the game, because whatever he has in hand, he can pitch and draw before the newer cards are banished. But there will be no addition, so as long as Emilia can weather the storm, she got this.
Exactly. And she is forced into weathering it a tiny little bit, because she, again, has 2 sink blows here, 1 played on a previous attack, and 1 being pitched right now, even.
She seems to be favoring blocking with her heralds rather than just using them for offense.
But then again, on this side, we did also see a 7 attack would go again, and another 7 attack coming out from Henrik.
Yeah.
That is a lot of damage that she just may not be willing to take right now.
And I can see here in Hendrik's hand there is another constructed a card that's banning constructed called Plunder Run.
Ooh, I remember that one when I first started playing the game. All the guides recommended I put that in my Riptide deck, and I think that's about when it got banned.
Exactly, that's exactly what happened. That's how I remember it. Anyway, it's one of these cards where I can see I see why. I like the creation, I like the design in many ways, but the power level is kind of bonkers. It's very good to buff your attack and present like every attack you make threaten a snatch effect that you draw a card from.
Yeah, exactly. The card would probably be in a more acceptable position in Classic Constructed if it said something along the lines of on your next attack if it
Yeah,
hits, draw a card. But
and that's how we got Premeditate.
yes, and Premeditate is
It's
a lot fairer.
it's a good card. Well, it's balanced.
But this is Living Legend, so there's no holds barred. So anything that's been banned, anything
Yeah.
that people hate, anything that people don't want to see, it's all in here.
Mm. I mean, it's an even playing field in that sense.
Hmm.
That everyone gets to choose the busted cards. Oh, we got the judge call going on and get that fixed.
All right. So it is looking here like there's a little bit of uncertainty, most likely because we saw that Rosetta Thorn attacking, coming in for 2, and Media was trying to play a That All You Got, which is a yellow card that says when you defend an attack with it, that I believe damages for 2 or less, then when the combat chain closes, you get to draw a card. So I'm unsure exactly what the question is or what the judge call is for, but it looks like it might be related to that all you got, and they're probably considering some aspects of the arcane damage coming in and how to block that, when to block that, and what occurs in what order here. So yes, we are currently waiting for the judge.
Yeah,
Letting the players.
we got a judge on it.
All right. Did you get any
I
information?
I didn't get what the trouble was about.
Okay. So while we are waiting, Conrad, let's talk for a little bit about some of the older heroes, because for me, I'm a relatively new player. I came in around Outsiders with Riptide. I believe Prism may still have been legal at that point, but like Living Legend, either soon after I started playing or just before I started playing thereabouts.
Yeah, I think I started playing about the same time. I think Outsiders, but I don't think I ever faced OG Prism, so she probably was banned before that.
Mm.
So it is a while back. And there was also she was active in a meta where Starvo was still legal and speedrunning to Living Legend,
Mm-hmm.
like amassing an insane amount of Legend points in the very short time he was legal. And I mean, we will see many exciting games today with we got like this pretty much trifecta of heroes that seemed insanely powerful. It was OG Prism, it was Shane and Star were all active at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the meta was about that Prism had a really hard time into Shane, as far as I understood, because of all the small instances of damage. Starvo had a really hard time into Prism because of since he had few big attacks, it was hard to get rid of all the smaller shields.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there we go. We're back to the game.
So we
Yes.
can hold on to that thought and probably revisit that later. For now, it looks like we are seeing the. I think it looks like the attack with the Rosetta Thorn was retracted, rolled back, and I believe that means that that all you got that Amelia was playing on it may still be in, I think, Arsenal, because I do not believe it is in hand.
No, as you can see it in graveyard, unless she has played 2.
Okay, yeah, if it is in
Yeah,
graveyard, then
yeah.
that does mean that it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, we are on Amelia's turn.
Yeah.
We see her pitching that Arclight Sentinel, still a powerful card in Prism,
Mm.
making herself a Spectral Shield and swinging in.
Playing Shimmers of Silver.
I think that is the card that makes more shields, if I'm not
No,
mistaken.
it's one that buffs shields.
Oh, that is the one that every time you play a shield, it gets a +1 counter on it.
Yes.
And I can see how in the original Prism that was an even more powerful effect than it already is in Enigma, where we currently see it most of the time.
Oh, this was powerful.
And an Arclight Sentinel after it. So
Yeah, because this
for the players that are not aware, Arclight Sentinel is one of Prism's sort of tech cards, And Arclight Sentinel essentially says when your opponent attacks, they have to target the Sentinel. They cannot target anything else. And Arclight Sentinel has Spectra, which means that if it becomes the target of an attack, it just disappears into nothingness. The attack ends, and if your attack has go again, you do not get the go again. So if you have extra action points, you can still get around that, but you will not get the action point back from the go again. So that basically means that the moment that it comes down, you immediately are blocked. And the current prism that exists, that is something that she's kind of known for in Classic Constructed, sort of uses this to create sort of a combo where you can play out the Arclight Sentinel, your opponent is forced to attack it, and then you have a combo where you can get a card back from your graveyard and put it back into play to put the Arclight Sentinel back into play. And that is a combo that takes a while to set up, and you need things to sort of fall into place, but I believe that is currently the win condition of Prism in the regular Classic Constructed format. So, interestingly enough, the moment that comes down, we once again see the judge call going on, which allows us to talk about this briefly, because Arclight Sentinel is definitely an interesting card. And I'm honestly not all that surprised that we see a second judge call immediately after this, because again, this is Living Legend, so we are seeing all sorts of like wonky interactions, and this Arclight Sentinel has the potential to basically close out the game if you can get that loop going. If Chain cannot get around it with extra action points, he can essentially never attack again because he's forced to attack the Sentinel and then his turn ends. And
I mean, you can loop, but it's usually a thing for the other prism, the newer prism. Arclight is still a very powerful card because of basically if you manage to pay 6 resources to play it out, you can pretty much end your opponent's turn. So in Magic the Gathering terms, that would mean it's a time walk for 6, and it's a very powerful effect. And especially in conjunction with cards like Shimmers of Silver, like Emilia managed to get in play, that means for that whatever shield she has, Spectral Shield, if you manage to pitch a yellow card, all her shields can attack for free with Go Again, and that's a good thing. But they also get buffed by 1 from Shimmers of Silver, and things might start to snowball if she can improve her board by building even more shields, and also every time they attack, they get buffed by 1. It can be very tough to come back from because you will present a lot of damage, and I think we saw one Arclight Sentinel pitched earlier, but imagine if she gets another one on the board on her next turn, which will mean Henrik he will have to banish even more cards from his library, and misses another opportunity to get rid of the shield or the shimmers. It must be tough to come back from for him in that case. So it looks to me like...
I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong about this may have been what the judge call was about, but if you have rune chants up and you attack even into the Arclight Sentinel, the rune chants, do they still go to face? Because then they would be prevented by the shield. So that is one way to sort of clear out the shields even if your turn ends. Because I believe they resolve before the Arclight Sentinel does.
You know what? At this point, I'm glad I'm not the judge, because I don't know the answer to that question. I think the rune chants should be... I think they do the damage before the attack happens. So I think the rune chant damage would get through unless Emilia decides to use Hurricane Barrier.
But we see whatever happened during the judge call, it looks like the Arclight Sentinel is... that must be the one in the graveyard, I think, at this point.
So Arclight died, but it seems like Emilia also got to keep her Spectral Shield.
Exactly. And that is getting counters now, and it's Emilia seems to be attacking into Henrik with these cards.
It's a bit confusing play there, but I think Emilia attacked with Shimmers of Silver, buffing it by 1, then played Restless Coalescence, moving the counters from Shimmers and Shield to Restless Coalescence. But I don't know if they might be that play shortcutted the attacks with the other auras, but I don't think, since Emilia didn't pitch a yellow card, they shouldn't go again. I think she just played the Restless Coalescence as an instant.
Yes, I think so too, because otherwise the counters would have been moved there and they would have been there, or there would have been one less counter and a shield made, but it looks like we just have. So it seems like she's just playing that out, which is interesting, because usually the advantage of playing that out is if you have counters around, you put it on there so you can actually use it to make the spectrals. What is the
Exactly.
function of the card in this particular scenario when you play it out and it doesn't have any counters on it? You're just playing it for the extra ward?
I guess it is an attack. Once you pitch a yellow card, it is an attack that will get buffed, which would allow her to make even more spectral shields. Henrik is playing a card from his banish zone, and I'm gonna.
This
This
is
one
what
is one of the newer additions. It's called eloquent. Eloquent. How do you say eloquence or eloquent?
eloquent eulogy, I believe.
Yeah, just rolls off your tongue.
Exactly.
Yes, and this is one of those majestic slots, like one of the newer additions to the deck, which has a very powerful effect, and all the what's it called, the Vincent enthusiasts thought that this might be the one card that actually pushes Vincent to being a tier 1 hero. So far it hasn't happened, but I mean, with enough majestic slots in the future, it might going to be a thing. But I'm sure at least Shane is very grateful of having this card because it is a very powerful one. If you hit with it, you get an Eloquence token. And what Eloquence does is so that your next non-attack action gets go again, which can be very useful in a deck like Shane, which desperately needs every action point he can get.
Exactly. Especially if you're going to get around those Arclight Sentinels, if you need to be doing that later. But well, again, if it just gives go again, it's not going to help you get around that, sadly.
No, unfortunately, but it's a very powerful mechanic. Like Shane really needs action points. He can manage to fix resources in many ways, but he will have like not an actual hand, but he will have cards to play from his banish zone. And that's why action points are so useful, because the more he can do from his banish zone, he will take less blood depth damage and also present wider and wider turns.
And speaking of wide turns, we see a card that was recently banned. We see the Art of War. As an additional cost, you have to banish a card from your hand, and we see Chain happily doing that and banishing something he's going to be playing later anyway.
Yep.
The main reason, as we have heard from the blog, why the card was banned in Classic Constructed, but we're seeing it being put to good use here in Living Legend, as Henrik most likely is going to buff his attacks, draws up his cards, immediately plays another Belittle, and is setting up for a big turn here.
Minnowism. Belittle is the other one.
Yes,
but they come in pairs.
It's easier with Nimbleism and Nimble Strike.
Yeah.
But there is a bunch of older cards. I do remember there is Minnowism and Belittle, and I think there is Slogism and something similar, like Regurgitating Slog. Yeah. And they all have like similar effects, where like the Minnowism is the buff that then buffs the Belittle. Yep. And I think the Slogging thing is the card that then buffs the Regurgitating Slog, which is the effect. It's a cycle from like the older sets. And it's, since they are generics, they are playable by any hero, but we don't often see them anymore. I think some of them have been banned as well.
Yep, they are, because they are Belittle is banned, and when there is no Belittle, there wouldn't be as much point of using Minnowism either. Let's see, I'll show Belittle for you as well, because it's like pretty much any card with a tutor effect that allows you to search a library for another card is usually a very powerful thing. And if you play Belittle, you're allowed, if you reveal any attack action card with 3 or less base power, you can search a library for a card named Minnowism and put it into your hand. And that's mean you can get, if it's damage you need, you can pick the red Minnowism to your hand, and if it's more resources you need, you pick the blue Minnowism. And it's pretty insane that you can play a card, attack for 3 with go again, and go plus in resources with that action.
And that makes sense as well, because even in older card games, tutoring a card is always proven to be highly powerful, very often used successfully in combo decks. But in Flesh and Blood, it is even more powerful due to the fact that you really only get access to those 4 cards per turn, and usually less if you have to block your opponent. So if you can play a card that does a thing and then replaces itself, that is usually an incredibly powerful effect.
Absolutely.
And we see it. We see indeed the turn being set up. Henrik is coming in for what seems to be 7 damage first.
I think the glare is screwing with us, but I'm pretty sure it would almost have to be runic reclamation. I think, yeah.
Yeah, so we see some blocks and we see some
Or is it?
ward being thrown in front of it.
Yeah, we still take 2 damage. If that is a runic reclamation, that would mean the shimmers is gone as well. I'm not. Oh no, wait! It's buffed by Art of War. It's probably something else.
Yes, it might have been because I think we did see the belittle coming out. Well, we saw the
Yeah, yeah,
Miniwism
yeah.
coming out.
I was too busy talking about it, so I forgot the Miniwism being played.
Yeah, so we have the
Yeah,
Miniwism
so
and the Art
yeah,
of
yeah,
War.
okay, I'm stupid. So it's a 3 power attack being buffed by 4. So that's why it is at 7. And it's it's the Meeps. Mischievous Meeps.
Ooh, that is another one of those very interesting cards that I've seen that card around several times, and I've always been like, ooh, I can see how that card is good. Like I feel like there are some situations where that's kind of sneaky. It's annoying that it has to hit.
Yeah.
But being able to just steal an item from your opponent, there's a lot of mechanologists that would cry if that happened, and especially if you have those aggro decks that don't block well. If you can buff this somehow and throw it at a mechanologist, they would probably not be very happy about being on the receiving end of that and having something like their Techno core being stolen.
No, and I would wish it would, if it only would have costed 0 instead. Might be too good, but it's like it's a 1 resource for 2 damage. It's not that great, but the effect is powerful. But it might be too easy to block.
Yes, you need some way to buff up the damage, because otherwise it is never going to hit.
Yeah.
It can be blocked by basically by most, well, by about half of the equipment, and by basically every card blocks it out by default.
Yeah.
It does have to go again, so you do then get into the territory where in some situations, because of the effect being powerful, it will demand a block, so it basically forces your opponent to pay that card. But then you're still going 1 for 1, so that just means you're trading evenly, essentially.
Yeah. And we see here, I think Henrik has 4 Seeds of Agony in his banish zone. And that would mean he's taking 4 blood up damage at the end of turn.
Yes, it looks like it looked like Henrik was setting up to have a really powerful turn here with the Art of War, but we saw Emilia just blocking out and stemming the damage quite well, only down to 32 health, whereas Henrik is down to 16, and with all of those soul shackles is banishing. He's not just fatiguing himself, he's also killing himself with blood depth.
Yep. But yeah, he's up to 4 soul shackles. And I mean, you can stack up on Seeds of Agony. If you decide to, I can take some damage now, so that next time when I do have enough damage to present in 1 turn, I can blow all of them at once. It might be worth taking all that blood up damage, because at this point Emilia is barely sending any attacks back at all at Henrik. So there is pretty much Henrik doesn't have to be that worried about his life totals. He probably will be fine. I think deck damage is a real hurt here. But speaking of that, he actually decides to use all 4 of his Seeds of Agony.
Playing all of them, so
Yeah.
he's going to make a card deal a whole bunch of arcane damage when it comes in.
Yeah, so and he also played a Plunder Run from Arsenal. So that would mean the next attack is +3, will deal 4 arcane damage, and a card on hit.
It's an interesting combination of cards, and I like the seeds as well as sort of like a mom, can we have a rune chant type thing? Because it's essentially just sort of adding rune chants onto your weapon without actually making rune chants.
See here, and this will be his attack of choice will be a Rift Bind. So that is a very buffed Rift Bind.
Yes, we see it going in for
total.
10 total damage here. Yeah, X is the number of non-attack actions you have played this turn, indeed. So because of all of the seeds being played, the attack on this is getting buffed quite a bit, and it is also coming for all of those arcane pings, and Henrik will probably get to draw a card off of this. I do believe that since it does not have go again, I don't think he has a way of giving it go again.
With the creepers, might be.
Yes. Because otherwise his turn would end after that. but it is something like a 15 damage attack. I think it's like 5 damage. Then there's 4 arcane coming off the seeds of, and then there might have been more rune chants as well, but I'm not 100% sure about. So it's at least 14.
Just trying to bring up the card with probably the smallest text in all of Flesh and Blood, Spellbound Creepers. So basically what they can do is if you play a non-attack, you activate creepers, you can play a non-attack action as if it were an instant. And the trick is that if you actually manage to do this, play a card with Go Again as an instant, you will get an extra net action point out of it. And that's the power of Spellbound Creepers. Not only you can play give cards Go Again per se, you can also get extra action points out of them.
Yes, and I feel like this is something that we're seeing more and more decks do. It's not. It's a kind of a weird niche strategy, but it's something that Bolton can also do when he plays his what is it? The combo card, Lumina Ascension.
Yeah, yeah.
When he plays his Lumina Ascension at instant speed with the Spirit of Irene, Lumina Ascension also has Go Again. So even if he was out of action point or his attack did not have Go Again, he can still sort of like get it that way. We see Aurora playing with this as well, and I think we might see more of it in decks to come.
Oh, and it seems like we missed this. I think before he already played a Shadow Puppetry. So Shadow Puppetry is another. It's a shadow card which gives you next attack Go Again, and if you hit with it, you might banish the top of your card of your library. So it would give him. Okay, we got in another judge call.
Yes. So once again, we can immediately see. I think we've now in one game had as many judge calls we've had the entire stream yesterday. So we can see sort of the complexity that comes in with the Living Legends format, as players are consistently questioning what exactly is going on, and it makes sense as well because we've seen Henrik play 4 Seeds of Agony, a card that gives him Go Again, then coming in with arcane damage after doing a plunder run. It's a pretty wild combination of cards. So they are trying to sort of puzzle their way through it and try and figure out exactly what the best way to approach this is and how to sort of proceed and how to play this out exactly. But yeah, once again, we do see a lot of damage coming out here from Henrik with the Shadow Puppetry. That attack is gonna have Go Again as well. So that actually gives me a decent question for you, Konrad. What do you think is the way for Prism to win this? We see Chain with a constant aggression. Is Prism just trying to hold off and trying to defend herself, or is
I
there a
would
point?
guess so, because there are, since Shane already has gotten rid of most, if not all, of his Blood Debt card, that won't be a path of victory. And he's up to, is it 4 or 5 Soul Shackles by now? I think it's 4.
I think it was on 4, yes.
Yeah, so that would mean he banishes 4 cards every turn, at least 4, unless he decides to give himself another shackle. There are not too many turns left for Henrik to deal with Emilia's life total. And even though she's down to 32, he has been doing in total 8 damage for all his efforts. So even though he's throwing everything but a kitchen sink at her, he's the one with like half her life totals.
Yes, exactly. You are correct. Like, I mean, he has been essentially sort of forced to block out, but has done so very efficiently so far. Only dropping to, well, the same hit points that her new variant has.
Exactly.
Funnily enough. But there will eventually one of them is going to need to close this game out. So at some point, Chain will have to either go over and completely overpower the blocking that Emilia is doing, or Emilia will have to find some way to scrounge up that 16 damage to get Henrik from near dead to actually dead.
Yeah. And Emilia is in no risk of running out of cards in her library.
Exactly. Like if anyone is going to kill themselves by fatigue, it is probably going to be Henrik in this case. So we see a Fate Foreseen being thrown in front of the 9, so we do see Emilia taking 5 damage. So Henrik is starting to put a bit of a dent in that giant wall of hit points, shields, and blocks.
Yeah. And Henrik decides to draw a card from Plunder Run he played before and banish a card from Shadow Puppetry. So he manages to land a hit on the banished part. What's it called? Something is the tentacle card that was banished. I think it's 2 resources, buff your next attack with for 3, and you can play it from your banished zone.
Let's see. I am also uncertain about it from the top of my head, but there are many cards that can be played from the banished zone, sadly. So it is a hard one to quickly look up. Is it
I
Hall
guess.
from Beyond that we're thinking of?
Yes, that's it. Hall from Beyond. We got it. And he also played Emilia played Eclipse. Let's see if we can get up the screen here. It's a legendary. It's a chain specialization, which makes it so that if you've played 6 or more blood up cards this turn, you can play Eclipse from your banished zone, and Eclipse creates an actual token called Ursur.
The Soul Reaper, which is one of the more grim names in the Flesh and Blood universe, and that's saying something, because Flesh and Blood is not exactly an upbeat, happy kind of setting. Aside from the happy Christmas presents and
yeah, that's nice.
the holiday themed cards. So it looks like Ursur that you're going to that you would create with something like this. It seems to be a demon ally. So it is one of the few ways to actually get something out of the boards, to actually make a little bit of a board state. This is something that we see in some heroes a little bit. I think Finset has a way to do this as well, or maybe I'm actually just thinking of the same card. And while I'm usually
Levaya has one as well.
yes,
Yeah.
that's the one. And usually people, like, there's a lot of people that feel like, some people say, oh, that there shouldn't be a board state, illusionists are a mistake. There are some people that are saying, oh, board state is great, more of it. I do like personally the mix that we're sort of seeing, where we're seeing it in Kasai as well, where it's like, okay, you're not a board state hero, you're not trying to like sort of make a bunch of stuff and win, but that is kind of your win condition anyway. You do have that as like your payoff in the late game. If you've generated all of that gold, you can create a couple of allies to like put that extra pressure on. It's an interesting way of creating another dimension to the game.
And do you notice something with the life totals now?
Yes, we noticed that.
Last turn Emilia was at 32 and the standing back then the standing was 32 to 16, and now Emilia is at 13. She lost 19 life last turn, and well, Henrik lost 2 to blood debt.
Exactly, and we're seeing the Art of War happening yet again, so it's looking to shape up another power turn for Henrik.
Yeah, and Henrik has an actual board state in the form of Ursur.
Exactly.
So fortunately for Emilia at this point, she has no cards in Soul, because if she had, Ursur would have go again. So that would mean it's just a free 6 power attack, go again.
Exactly.
And at this point, Ursur has to function as a chain ender, which is bad enough if you know that you're facing at least 6 damage coming in. And in addition to that, like every card in Hendrik's hand and most the cards, or every card in Hendrik's leftmost pile in his Spanish zone is playable attacks and non-attacks.
Exactly, and it also makes things harder for Emilia, because if she is playing some of those defense reactions, I think there is one that allows you to defend a little bit, and also as an extra cost you have to put a card in Soul. Well, the moment you do that, Ursur is just
Soul Shield,
come in immediately for that 6 go again.
Yep. So she pretty much has to. Maybe I don't think it doesn't work either. If she were to put a card in her Soul, blocking Ursur, he would get go again.
Yes, I think you're right, because it says when Ursur is attacking a hero. So this is I think state based. So if at any point there is a card in Soul, it has go again. It is not something that is checked for the moment you attack. Okay, so we see a Tome of Fjendal there, I think.
Yep, it is. So it seems like since 1 damage got through, Henrik got an Eloquence token, which will make it so that his next non-attack action has go again, and he's making good use of it by playing Tome of Fjendal, netting 2 more cards.
And he's once again stripping Emilia's hand as well. She's already pitched blocked with one card and pitched one card to prevent a rune chant. She does have
Yeah.
some free floating to prevent more arcane now if she needs to, but she only has 2 cards left to block with.
Yep.
And we know most likely Henrik is going to seek to end his attack chain with that Ursa, so that's going to be 6 damage. So if you save the 2 cards for that, then whatever he's throwing now will land.
And he's coming in with a Shadow's Ursa. That doesn't look that fancy, but it's still a very powerful card in the sense that it's a blue 3 block to begin with, but you can play it from your banish zone. And if you banish a card from your hand with Blood Depth, you will get Ursa Go again. So that means like any card Henrik has that can be played from banish zone, he might as well use to give Ursa Go again. So it's basically a free 2-power attack with no drawback, because every card he banishes with Blood Depth, he can play again. And here comes the second Ursa. Yeah, exactly this is happening. He's banishing a Seeds of Agony, which just buffs his next attack. So another free Ursa with Go again.
So we see one of those 2 cards being used to block. So there's only 3 block left in the hand for Amelia. Any damage after that is going to stick, aside from potentially 1 arcane. It looks like the chain is being closed deliberately by Henrik here.
Yep.
Maybe just to clear out some space on the battlefield.
No, but since he's playing the Seeds of Agony, so this means gives a break to Amelia in the sense that she can use her footsteps again to block with. But I bet she'd rather have Henrik not beat her anymore because there's so much damage coming in. There are still many attacks to go in the banish zone. Henrik has, I think, 2 cards in hand, and there is still the Ursa threat looming. So there has been 2 Shadows of Ursa attacking along with rune chants, and now I think there will be 2 Seeds of Agony and a Rift Bind coming in for. Or is there another Ursa? He's winging shop. Yeah, it will be another Ursa. So that's a 3rd Shadow of Ursa this turn. No. Henrik hasn't really made up his mind yet.
Yeah, he's thinking about how to squeeze the most damage out.
There seems to be some confusion about the Seeds of Agony.
We're seeing another very long chain.
Finally deciding on.
I believe the turns are so long that I'm losing track, but I believe this was the turn where the Art of War was played at the start of the turn as well, so all of these attacks will be coming in for extra damage.
Yes.
That makes it so hard to block them out. Well, I mean, in this case, the Shadow, if it comes for 2, it will be blocked out by a card for 3, so you can still block efficiently, but
the last card in Emilia's hand doesn't have a block value, it's a ward card.
So it looks like she is...
She wants to take the Arcane Sea damage first, and then play the Recrudescence.
Exactly. Yeah, it looks like there's, again, a little bit of confusion. No need for a judge call, but they're trying to...
Yeah, and I think we're a bit confused as well, because since the players aren't using the numerical dice at this point, it seems like Henrik probably shows Go again and draw card from Art of War. So the attacks, the Ursers are still for just 2.
Okay,
I think so.
Makes sense, yes. Playing a tome. If I'm not mistaken, that is also one of the tomes that was not banned.
Tome of Torment.
There it is. And it's an interesting card. It fits the Runeblade theme of being able to be played from the banished zone, and it will just draw you a card. So it's kind of like, especially someone like Chain, they will get it into their banished zone eventually, and they will just be able to play it out to just get a free card.
And it has some badass artwork.
It's great artwork indeed. So we see the boots once again being used to block.
I mean, don't you think it would make our point of the badass artwork better if we actually managed to get the artwork up on screen?
We'll see. Our little widget seems to be loading, and it's taking its time.
There we go.
But there it is.
There's the book.
Once again, very grim. The flesh and blood universe showing its colors.
Yeah, especially the shadow cards. like Jesus, they don't let up. It's so dark, everything.
Exactly. So we see all of the swings happening, and at the end of it all, Emilia is left with a singular point of life. She does draw. Well, so this is the interesting part, because she's drawing the two soul shields, but I believe those go into soul when they are blocked
Yeah,
with.
but she does have the Arclight Sentinel. It might not matter. She can respond to triggers at the beginning of turn. So this would give her a chance to play the Arclight Sentinel, making it so that Henrik has to attack into the ALS.
Because it doesn't quite look like it, but this game is actually coming down to the wire with Emilia being on 1 hit point now, but Henrik also being at the end of his deck. Because of the Soul Shackle, he has to banish everything else that is still left.
Yes, and we're also at the end of our time limit for the round.
Yeah, so we see Emilia pitch everything to the Arclight the first moment that she can, which means that Henrik now has to find a way to get himself that extra spell action point to get around that. Otherwise, he will not be able to attack Emilia.
Yes.
And that would mean a draw for this game.
Yeah, and Henrik also banishing his Carrion Husk because he's below 13 life.
Yes, he does have the Spellbound Creepers, so he can potentially do the line that we talked about earlier, where he can activate those and play a card as an instant to give himself go again, a non-attack.
Yeah, that would net him a action point, wouldn't it? Yeah, because it should do it. He should be able to. But I mean, he will still have to play both a non-attack action, an attack action, use the creepers, and play another non-attack action with go again.
Yes, it's still a bit of a tall order with the small hand he has. He has cards he can play from the Blood Depth Zone, but there seems to only be 3 of them.
Yeah, and I think they're all attacks.
He's currently looking at Emilia's graveyard. I think he's trying to banish cards from there, trying to give himself the optimal chance to win.
Yeah.
And he is taking cards out, but I believe that Henrik has noticed here that... Yes, if I'm not mistaken, there was no way for him to get around the Arclight Sentinel. He did not have the cards required to do it.
I'm not certain if Emilia decided to concede or if the game ended in a draw.
It is an interesting state indeed. But this is this is a very good first Living Legend match. A lot of craziness happening, Shane drawing their entire deck, fatiguing, and us being actually completely unsure of if Emilia conceded there, if Henrik did not have the line.
A lot of judge calls going on.
Yes, that as well.
I mean, if you want to make a quick run through of the game, what happened was that Emilia she came out and into the game with the game plan of I have to block things out. Whenever I got cards left over, I can attack with them. But mainly, I need to block at every chance possible. And that left her at 32 life, with Henrik just banishing more and more cards from his library. He had, I think, 4 soul shackles at the point when he was at 16 life with four soul shackles, and then decided now it's go time. And on that turn, he dealt 19 damage through Emilia's full hand. So that meant she was down to 13, while Henrik still at 16, then taking Blood Depth down to 14. And on the next turn, he came in with an equally big turn. So we can see the real power of Shane. At first, it doesn't seem, it seems good to be able to like give a card go again for free and banish a card. It's not a steep cost. And the next thought is, well, now Shane has given many cards go again. He has to banish many cards from his top. And you might be a bit worried for Shane, but like, how is he going to do this? Because the attacks aren't that big. They doesn't look very impressive at first sight. And then there's some kind of turning point when the banish zone, Shane's banish zone, is about as big as his hand. It's like he's playing with pretty much 2 hands each turn, with a good mix of both physical and arcane damage. And it's very, very hard to keep up with. And that's what we saw happening here. So apart from the judge calls and the time we're running out, it's absolutely looked like Shane had this game in the bag. because even though Emilia would decide to block with everything she had, it would be a really tough time getting through. So it seems like we're already on our next game.
All right, so we're going to take a very brief ad break so we can get some things set up here, but we should be going into the next game in a few minutes.